The cold bit deeper than hunger ever had. Ilara pulled her thin coat tighter as she sat beneath the flickering streetlight, the city rushing past her as if she didn't exist. People stepped around her like she was part of the pavement, invisible, disposable. Her stomach twisted, not just from emptiness but from humiliation. She had once been someone's daughter, someone's student, someone with plans. Now she was just the homeless girl near the subway, whispered about, avoided, pitted for a second and forgotten the next. Earlier that evening, a cafe owner had shoved her away when she asked for leftover bread. "Get lost," he'd snapped. "You're bad for business." Ilara didn't cry. She hadn't cried in weeks. Tears felt like a luxury she could no longer afford. She was 23, alone in the world, and surviving on kindness that came less and less each day. Her parents were gone. Her foster homes had been worse than the streets. And tonight, as winter crept into her bones, she realized something terrifying: she might not survive another week. That was when the woman in black approached her. Elegant. Too elegant for this part of the city. Her shoes didn't touch puddles, her coat didn't gather dust. Her silver hair was tied neatly back, and her eyes, ancient, calm, piercing, studied Ilara with unsettling focus. "You're freezing," the woman said gently. Ilara stiffened. People didn't speak gently to girls like her. "I am fine," she lied. The woman smiled faintly. "No. You're brave." That single word cracked something inside her. The woman offered her a business card, thick, black, embossed with a silver crest. "There is work," she said. "Legal. Safe. Life-saving." Ilara hesitated. She'd learned to distrust offers that sounded too good. "What kind of work?" "A contract," the woman replied. "One signature. One night. Enough money to change your life." "How much?" Ilara whispered. The number made her breath hitch. It was more money than she'd ever seen. Enough for food, shelter, enough to live. "What's the catch?" Ilara asked. The woman's gaze softened. "You must marry a dying man." Silence swallowed the street. Ilara laughed weakly. "You're joking." "I am not," the woman said. "He is powerful, wealthy, and cursed. He has 3 nights left." Ilara stood slowly. Every instinct screamed danger. "Why me?" "Because," the woman said quietly, "you would only agree to survive, not for love, greed, or ambition. And that matters." Hours later, Ilara sat in a candlelit room that felt older than time itself. Velvet curtains blocked the moonlight. The air hummed with something heavy, alive. On a carved bed lay the most terrifyingly beautiful man she had ever seen, pale, motionless, regal even in sleep. This was no ordinary man. "This is King Valerius," the woman whispered. "Ruler of the Night Court." Ilara's heart thundered. "You said he was dying." "He is," the woman replied. "Unless you sign." The contract rested in Ilara's trembling hands. Ancient words glimmered faintly on the parchment. Marriage. Protection. Binding. A term she couldn't fully understand. "What happens if I sign?" Ilara asked. The woman met her eyes. "You survive. He awakens. And your soul becomes bound to his fate." Ilara looked at the sleeping king. For a moment, just a moment, his fingers twitched as if he sensed her presence. She thought of the street, the cold, the hunger, the people who treated her like nothing. And she signed. The candles flared. The room trembled. And somewhere deep within the ancient vampire king, something long dead began to stir. Ilara woke to silence so deep it felt unreal. Not the broken, restless quiet of the streets, but a vast, breathing stillness, as though the world itself was holding its breath. She lay on a bed softer than anything she had ever known, her body wrapped in warmth, the scent of old wood and candle smoke lingering in the air. For a terrifying moment, she thought it had all been a dream. Then she felt it. A strange pull in her chest. Gentle, constant. Like an invisible thread tied to something ancient and powerful. She sat up sharply. The room was enormous. Arched ceilings, stone walls etched with symbols she couldn't read, heavy curtains drawn tight against the night. A fire burned low in a marble hearth. Everything whispered wealth, power, and isolation. "You're awake." The voice was deep, calm, and impossibly controlled. Ilara turned. He stood near the window now, no longer lifeless on the bed. Still. Watching her with eyes like molten silver reflecting firelight. King Valerius looked nothing like a dying man. He looked like a ruler carved from shadow and moonlight. Instinctively, Ilara shrank back. "I didn't mean to," she began, her voice trembling. "I was told it was just a contract. I needed the money." I didn't know you were. A king? He finished quietly. She nodded. Silence stretched between them. Not hostile but heavy. You were honest, Valeria said at last. That alone sets you apart. Elara swallowed. Am I in danger? No, he said immediately. Too immediately. You are under my protection now. The word sent a shiver through her, though she didn't understand why. Madame Seraphine entered the room soundlessly. The bond has formed, she announced. Weak but real. Valerius's jaw tightened. I never intended to bind her fully. You signed willingly, Seraphine replied. So did she. The old laws do not care for intention, only truth. Elara looked between them. What bond? Seraphine studied her kindly. You saved his life. Valerius turned away. At a cost she did not fully understand. Anger flared through Elara's fear. I understood enough. I was dying out there. No one cared. You needed something. I needed something. That was the deal. Valerius faced her again, surprise flickering across his otherwise controlled expression. You speak boldly, he said. I've been invisible too long to stay quiet, Elara replied. For the first time, something softened in his eyes. Over the following days Elara learned the truth. She was not a prisoner, but neither was she free. The bond tethered her to the night court, granting her safety, shelter, and protection, but also expectations. Whispers followed her through the halls. Servants stared. Nobles sneered behind polite smiles. A homeless girl did not belong beside a vampire king. One evening Elara overheard two courtiers speaking. She's nothing, one scoffed. A beggar with a signature. She'll be discarded once the king regains full strength, another said. Their laughter echoed long after they left. That night, Elara wandered the eastern garden, fighting tears she refused to shed. Valerius found her there. You should not walk alone, he said. I walked alone my whole life, she answered quietly. He hesitated. Why did you really agree? She met his gaze. Because no one had ever offered me survival without cruelty. Something shifted between them then, small, fragile, real. Valerius nodded once. Then you will not regret it. And though neither of them spoke it aloud, both felt the truth settling deeper in their souls. This bond was no longer just a contract. It was becoming a choice. The night court was not kind to outsiders. Elara learned this quickly. Every corridor she walked felt like a silent trial. Noble vampires watched her from behind jeweled masks of politeness, their gazes sharp with judgment. Some bowed, out of obligation not respect. Others barely acknowledged her existence at all, as if ignoring her might erase the uncomfortable truth that a homeless human now stood beside their king. Valerius noticed everything. He said nothing. That silence frightened the court more than anger ever could. Elara tried to stay invisible, but invisibility had never protected her before, and it wouldn't now. The difference was that this time eyes followed her not with indifference, but with calculation. At the first formal gathering she stood alone at the edge of the great hall, overwhelmed by crystal chandeliers and centuries-old power. Music echoed softly while nobles glided across marble floors. Elara felt painfully out of place in a simple gown, her hands clasped tight to keep from shaking. A noblewoman approached her, smile sharp as glass. You must be grateful, she said sweetly. From the streets to the throne in one night. Elara held her gaze. I am grateful to be alive. The woman laughed softly. Enjoy it while it lasts. The threat lingered long after she walked away. That night, Valerius summoned Elara to the high library, a place no human had entered in generations. Shelves towered to the ceiling, filled with ancient texts glowing faintly with magic. You felt it today, Valerius said without turning. Their hostility. Yes, Elara answered. But I can handle it. He studied her closely. That is what concerns me. She frowned. Why? Because courage without power is dangerous. Elara stepped forward. Then teach me. The request stunned him. You wish to learn the ways of my world? He asked. I wish to survive it, she replied. Not as a shadow. Not as a burden. Something old and unreadable crossed his face. Very well, Valerius said. But understand this. Knowledge awakens truths you may not wish to face. The lessons began immediately. Elara learned the laws of the night court, the ancient languages, the rules binding kings and consorts alike. To everyone's shock she learned quickly, too quickly. Symbols she had never seen before felt strangely familiar. Words rolled off her tongue as if remembered rather than taught. During one lesson she read aloud from an ancient scroll. The room went still. Valerius stared at her. Stop. Elara froze. What did I do? You spoke the first tongue, he said slowly. A language older than my crown. I don't know how, she whispered. I just understood it. The bond between them pulsed, warm, alive. That same night an attack came. A shadow creature breached the outer gates, drawn by the weakening of ancient seals. Chaos erupted. Guards shouted. Magic flared. Elara was alone in the east wing when the creature found her. She didn't scream. She stood her ground. Instinct took over. Words she had never learned burned on her tongue. Light, silver and fierce, erupted from her hands, forcing the creature back. Valerius arrived moments later, fury and fear blazing in his eyes. You were injured? He demanded. No, she said, shaking. But I think I did something. He stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. The court was wrong, he said quietly. You were never chosen by chance. Elara's voice trembled. What am I? Valerius answered with a truth that would change everything. You are bound not just to my life, he said, but to my throne. And far away in the deepest shadows of the night court, someone smiled, because the queen had begun to awaken. The night court erupted the next morning. Whispers turned to accusations. Accusations turned to fear. Elara's name echoed through marble halls like a curse and a prayer spoken at the same time. Some called her a miracle. Others called her a threat. Ancient magic had answered her voice, and in the vampire world, that was never coincidence. Valerius stood before the High Council, his expression carved from ice. They demand answers, Madame Seraphine warned quietly. And blood if they do not like them. Elara waited outside the council chamber, her heart pounding. For the first time since signing the contract, she felt truly afraid, not of monsters but of judgment. The doors opened. Valerius stepped out and extended his hand. Every noble in the chamber watched. Come, he said. Stand with me. Gasps rippled through the court. Elara hesitated only a second before placing her hand in his. The bond surged, steady, grounding, alive. He led her to the throne dais, placing her beside him, not behind. She is under my protection, Valerius announced. Any threat against her is a threat against the crown. A council lord sneered. She is human. Valerius's gaze turned lethal. She is chosen. Another voice rose. The first tongue answers her. That power belongs only to queens. Silence followed. Elara's knees weakened. Queen. Valerius looked at her, not as a king, not as a ruler, but as a man carrying centuries of solitude. I never intended to involve her in our wars, he said. But destiny does not ask permission. That night, betrayal struck. A trusted council member attempted to sever the bond during a forbidden ritual, believing Elara's removal would restore the old order. The pain was unbearable. Elara collapsed, the world shattering into white agony. Valerius felt it instantly. The castle shook as his fury was unleashed. The traitor was captured. Exiled, not executed, by Elara's request. Mercy, the court murmured. Elara, pale but standing, answered softly, power without compassion is just cruelty wearing a crown. Valerius looked at her as if she had saved more than his life. Later, in the quiet of the moonlit chamber, Valerius knelt before her. I swore never to love, he said. It makes kings weak. Elara touched his cheek. It makes them human. I will not cage you, he said. But if you stay you will change everything. She met his eyes. I already have. Outside the court bowed. Not to the king. But to the future queen who had once been homeless, ignored and broken, and had risen without losing her kindness. The night court gathered beneath a bloodless dawn. For the first time in centuries, the sky above the ancient citadel glowed with silver instead of crimson, as if the world itself sensed change. Elara stood at the balcony beside Valerius, her hand steady despite the weight of 1,000 gazes fixed upon her. She was no longer afraid. The whispers had softened. The sneers were gone. What remained was awe. The bond between them had completed its final awakening the night before, quietly, without ceremony. No pain. No fear. Only understanding. Elara had dreamed of standing in moonlight, not as a servant of fate, but as its equal. When she woke, Valerius had been watching her with something dangerously close to reverence. You chose this, he had said. So did you, she replied. Now, before the entire court, Valerius raised his voice. By the old laws and the living bond, he declared, I name Elara not as consort by contract, but as queen by choice. The court fell to one knee. Ilara's breath caught. She remembered the street, the hunger, the nights she begged the world not to forget her. And now the world bowed. A former council lord, the same man who had once mocked her, stepped forward trembling. "Forgive us," he said. "We mistook humility for weakness." Ilara met his gaze calmly. "I survived because I had to," she said. "I lead because I choose to." Justice followed swiftly, but fairly. The corrupt were removed. The innocent were protected. No executions. No cruelty. The night court changed not through fear but through example. Valerius watched her rule with quiet pride. She listened before commanding. She protected before punishing. She remembered what it felt like to be powerless, and refused to let others feel that way again. In private, when crowns and titles faded, they were simply two souls who had found one another at the edge of despair. One evening, as the moon rose full and calm, Valerius took her hands. "I once believed love would destroy me," he admitted. "But you did not weaken me. You made me better." Ilara smiled softly. "You didn't save me," she said. "You gave me a chance. I saved myself." "And I," he said, leaning his forehead to hers, "was saved by kindness." Far below the castle, the city thrived. Shelters replaced shadows. Hope replaced fear. Stories spread, not of a ruthless vampire king, but of a queen who rose from nothing and changed everything without losing her soul. Ilara looked out over the world that once rejected her. She no longer needed to survive. She had learned how to live. And beside her stood a king who ruled the night, but followed the light she carried within.